This week on The Inside Story, former President Donald Trump survives an assassination attempt days before receiving his party's nomination for another run at the presidency. See who he picked for a running mate. President Joe Biden insists he can serve 4 more years despite continued questions about his age. Plus, a Trump-appointed judge throws out the classified documents case against the former president. Now, on The Inside Story, USA Votes 2024, the Republican National Convention.
Catherine Gibson, VOA's congressional correspondent in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for the Republican National Convention. This week, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump takes center stage amidst heightened security measures after surviving an assassination attempt.
Friends, delegates, and fellow citizens, I stand before you this evening with a message of confidence, strength, and hope. 4 months from now, we will have an incredible victory, and we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country. Together, we will launch a new era of safety, prosperity, and freedom for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. The discord and division in our society must be healed. We must heal it quickly. As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States. Thank you.
In the aftermath of the shooting incident that left Trump injured, the United States Secret Service remains confident in its ability to protect the former president. VOA's Arash Arabasadi has more details.
Take a look at what happened.
Former President Donald Trump survived what the FBI described as an assassination attempt at a campaign stop in Pennsylvania. Trump says he was shot in the ear during the attack by what authorities described as an AR-style rifle, like those used in several mass shootings in the United States. The FBI identified 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks as Trump's would-be assassin, and the Secret Service says it fatally shot him outside the rally venue. The Biden administration says it is looking into security failures.
At President Biden's direction, an independent review of the incident will be conducted, one that will examine the Secret Services and other law enforcement actions before, during, and after the shooting, to identify the immediate and longer-term corrective actions required to ensure that the no-fail mission of protecting national leaders is most effectively met.
My fellow Americans.
The White House says Biden spoke with Trump by phone, and the president later addressed the nation from the Oval Office. He called for unity while condemning the violence that's plagued American politics, including the January 6th assault on the U.S. Capitol and extremists threatening election workers. Back in Pennsylvania, cameras captured FBI agents entering the home of suspected shooter Crooks in the Bethel Park area. His motives for the shooting remain a mystery. But how he carried out the attack in the first place became a political flashpoint. As House Committee on Oversight and Accountability Chairman James Comer of Kentucky said, Americans demand answers, adding that the committee will soon send a formal invitation for a hearing to Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
In an unsettling election year, this Republican National Convention has turned out to be surprisingly and comfortingly normal. The party faithful have welcomed presidential nominee Donald Trump, and with the usual pomp and circumstance, the vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance. VOA's national correspondent Carolyn Pursuti leads our coverage here at the convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Just my children. This is Donald Trump's first public appearance since he was shot. He didn't need to speak. His state delegates filled the void. Here to join his new ballot partner, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. It was the biggest political secret of the year, announced at the Republican National Convention.
It is therefore my honor to nominate Ohio Senator J.D. Vance for the office of Vice President of the United States of America.
Senator Vance, at age 39, brings youth to the presidential election. Known for his rural America memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, he's a former Marine and a conservative who once referred to Trump as America's Hitler. President Biden Monday called Vance a clone of Trump.
J.D. Vance be nominated by acclamation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye! The announcement comes on the first day of the Republican National Convention in front of 2,400 state delegates pledging their votes for the expected nominee, former President Donald Trump.
You're only going to interest another net.
A few blocks from the convention, protesters against Republican policies and Trump.
I thought it was important to remind people that we have two candidates, and one of the candidates has 34 felony counts against him.
But the Vance choice and Trump's rebound after the attempted assassination energized this group even more.
The question is not about the past. The question is about the future and how we move forward as a country and the issues impacting the American people.
These delegates say they want unity. Now, at the end of the first day of their convention, they can rally behind the full presidential ticket of Trump and Vance. Carolyn Pursuti, VOA News at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
The official theme of Day 2 of the Republican National Convention, Make America Safe Again. It could have been Republicans all play nice again. Donald Trump's former foes in this year's party primary took turns issuing messages of unity.
If you want to seal the border, vote Trump. If you want to restore law and order in this country, vote Trump.
Besides entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley also put aside her previous policy differences with the former president.
I'll start by making one thing perfectly clear. Donald Trump has my strong endorsement.
During this year's primary battle, Haley was Trump's last challenger. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations during Trump's administration had attacked her former boss as unfit and unelectable. Delegates from Haley's home state, such as Jerry McDaniel and Robin Hawley, prefer to look ahead, not back.
It doesn't matter who ran against him before. President Trump is bringing them all in together, and that's what we want to see.
Do you think Governor Haley has her heart totally into this Trump 2024 campaign now against President Biden?
I think if she is a person that I think that she might be, because I don't know her, I think that she's got some forgiveness and some motivation to move on and to keep us together and to help our country.
Other former Trump opponents from this year's primary and those from the past addressing the convention Tuesday included Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, Marco Rubio of Florida, former Housing Secretary Ben Carson, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
My fellow Republicans, let's send Joe Biden back to his basement and let's send Donald Trump back to the White House.
In his first speech on the national political stage, Donald Trump's vice presidential nominee, U.S. Senator J.D. Vance, came out swinging.
We're done importing foreign labor. We're going to fight for American citizens and their good jobs and their good wages.
Relatively unknown across the United States, Vance, a Yale Law School graduate who served in the U.S. military for 6 years, has served in elected office for about a year and a half. He was introduced by his wife, Usha Vance.
Chosen to help lead our country through some of its greatest challenges. I am grateful to all of you for the trust you have placed in him.
Wednesday night was a chance not only for Vance to introduce himself to the American public, but to prove his foreign policy credentials.
Together, we will make sure our allies share in the burden of securing world peace. No more free rides for nations that betray the generosity of the American taxpayer.
Delegates said they were not bothered by Vance's lack of experience.
Really what we're electing here is potential leadership. And he has got proven potential leadership, and he's not one of us old fossils.
Or his past comments criticizing Trump.
I love that he's young and he can be molded. And he is embracing the America First, which I also appreciate. And I think under Trump's tutelage, he can go pretty far.
In a night focused on making America strong again, Trump's son summed up the choice facing voters.
It's a choice between people who are proud of America and people who are ashamed of America. And ultimately, it's a choice between America last and America first.
In the Democratic camp, President Biden condemned the attempt to assassinate his political rival and called for the country to cool down the political rhetoric. All this as questions about his age and his ability to govern for the next 4 years dog his campaign. And a series of one-on-one interviews have done little to assure the public that he's up to the job.
President Donald. Republicans are pledging unity and support behind their presidential nominee, former President Donald Trump, during their national convention this week. For President Joe Biden, it's a lonelier scene. He is isolating in his home in Delaware following a positive COVID test. This amid calls from prominent Democrats for him to step down. Analysts say it's looking grim for the president.
Democrats can't even decide whether Biden is really in trouble or not, and if he is, how to get him out of the race, and if they get him out of the race, who should replace him and how. Now, that's pretty fundamental. Meanwhile, the Republicans have gotten their act together. They've had a great convention. And Donald Trump, because in part of the assassination attempt, probably has more public support than he ever has had.
Privately, the president is reportedly listening to concerns. Publicly, he is resisting calls to step aside.
I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country, in spite of the fact they're told we couldn't get it done. But there's more to do, and I'm reluctant to walk away from that.
65% of Democrats say Biden should step aside, according to an AP NORC poll.
It is the height of folly and ignorance to claim based on the polls, which constantly change, who's going to win and who's going to lose, and you should force candidates out just because you think they can't win.
American University presidential historian Alan Lichtman's keys to the White House system has accurately predicted all but one U.S. election results since 1984. He says Democrats should stick with Biden. Lichtman's system ignores polling, including that 70% of Americans said they are not confident that Biden has the mental capacity to be president. For Trump, it's 51%. What happens now is anybody's guess. If Biden agrees to step aside, the most orderly scenario would be for him to endorse an alternative candidate. Vice President Kamala Harris would be a logical choice, at least financially, because as part of the Biden-Harris ticket, she would inherit their campaign war chest. Patsy Kuswara, VOA News, Washington.
A U.S. district judge in Florida presiding over the classified documents case against former President Donald Trump dismissed the charges Monday. She sided with defense lawyers who argued that the special counsel who filed the charges was illegally appointed. Trump faced dozens of felony counts accusing him of illegally keeping classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida. He is also accused of obstructing FBI efforts to get them back. He had pleaded not guilty and denied wrongdoing. Defense lawyers filed multiple challenges to the case, including one based on a legal technicality. They asserted that special counsel Jack Smith had been illegally appointed under the Constitution's Appointments Clause because he was appointed by the Attorney General rather than being confirmed by Congress. In a 93-page order, Judge Eileen Cannon wrote, quote, "The framers gave Congress a pivotal role in the appointment of principal and inferior officers. That role cannot be usurped by the executive branch or diffused elsewhere, whether in this case or another case, whether in times of heightened national need or not. The Department of Justice says it will appeal the decision." Although the motive for the attempted assassination still remains unclear, heated political rhetoric has long been a concern for observers of political speech, for concern it could incite violence. We spoke to two experts on presidential campaigns, University of Pennsylvania professor Claire Finkelstein and Third Way executive Jim Kessler, to learn how the attack could impact what each campaign is saying about the other.
Both sides believe that the other side's rhetoric is inappropriate.
We had years and years in this country in which people debated issues, talked about principles, actually tried to answer questions that the media has or that members of the American public have about their positions, about what they stand for. So the short answer is that I really hope that it helps to bring us back to actual policy discussions and positions rather than slinging insults and hurling accusations.
I think the Biden language is strong. Some may say that it crosses a line, but it's certainly not as incendiary as the Trump rhetoric and the Republican rhetoric. But I'm not really sure how well each side is going to be able to turn down the heat.
Though I don't want to be blaming the victim in this attack, but I do think that this is a lesson to candidates, and I hope to former President Trump, that words really matter. And that when you use words that point in the direction of violence, and when you use words suggesting that there needs to be any kind of explosive reaction to the other side in a country rife with weapons, we really run an enormous risk, and we have been ratcheting up the political violence for years, making it really dangerous to hold public office.
Project 2025, a conservative blueprint to centralize governmental authority under the president, has in recent weeks made its way into the broader U.S. electorate. While most say they don't know much about it, in a recent YouGov poll, the majority of those who said they did said they didn't like it. We turn to VOA's national correspondent Steve Herman for more.
Donald Trump, campaigning for president 8 years ago, promised to bend Washington's bureaucracy to his will.
If I'm elected president, we are going to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C.
Trump's continuing vow to drain the swamp, meaning to rid government of those who impose policy but are unaccountable to the president, is now backed with a blueprint crafted by more than 100 conservative groups. Project 2025, published by the right-wing Heritage Foundation, instructs how to swing a wrecking ball against the administrative state. Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts is warning there may be violence along the journey to its implementation.
We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
After that incendiary comment, Trump tried to distance himself from Project 2025, asserting that while he knows nothing about it and its authors, I disagree with some of the things they're saying. The project's head, Paul Dans, appearing on C-SPAN, left no doubt Trump's words and ideas were the inspiration.
He was president for 4 years, so many of the ideas are carry-ons
from his original work. So I would like to think that a lot of it does kind of spring from that first term of Trump.
VOA requested an interview with the Heritage Foundation. The think tank said it could not make anyone available, but emailed a statement stressing Project 2025 does not speak for any candidate or campaign. Project 2025 seeks to eliminate the checks and balances writers of the Constitution, such as James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, crafted through dividing power among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of the government, according to Will Marshall, the president of the Progressive Policy Institute.
Madison and Jefferson ought to be spinning in their graves when they see how much power they want to concentrate in the next president's hands. And if that president happens to be Donald Trump, then it's a kind of a nightmare for the country, given the way he's misused power in the past.
President Joe Biden's re-election campaign has made Project 2025 a primary target, setting up a separate website dedicated to criticism of it and highlighting liberal media reaction.
Critics are calling it the fascist playbook, and it should be one of the reasons, if not the reason, that you vote this November.
The sweeping plan also calls for slashing government funding for renewable energy and climate change mitigation. The Department of Education would be eliminated. The Federal Bureau of Investigation would be overhauled top to bottom, as would the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which oversees the Voice of America. Steve Herman, VOA News, at the White House.
It has become an instant, iconic image. Former President Trump, blood streaking his face, fist raised in the air as he survives a botched assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. Social media ensured that image and other iconic images from that day circulated quickly around the world. Media analysts examine the power of news photography and how independent media work to combat the waves of disinformation in the wake of an attack. Christina Casiedo-Smith has the story.
It's a photo seen around the world. Taken by veteran AP journalist Ivan Vucci, the image captures the immediate aftermath of the attempted assassination of Trump at a campaign rally.
It's a normal rally. I've done it hundreds of times, and over my left shoulder, I heard several pops, and I knew immediately it was gunfire.
Vucci is one of dozens of photojournalists covering the Butler, Pennsylvania rally Saturday. The shooting left one bystander dead and injured Trump and others. Images from that day are described by some U.S. media outlets as iconic. But ethics experts are watching to see how, in a polarized time, media and others use the coverage of the attack.
The media needs to stay on the facts and tell the whole story the way it is, but it doesn't have to actually exaggerate. It doesn't have to add outrage to its own actual headlines.
Vincent says the portrayal of the moment will play into the political discourse.
The real ethics of it, I feel, comes in interpreting where the picture is, what it stands for in the narrative about American culture, politics, guns, violence.
For photojournalist Vucci, his priority was documenting the events unfolding right in front of him.
I knew that this was a moment in American history that had to be documented. I mean, it's our job as journalists to do this work.
In the hours after the shooting, social media mentions of Trump skyrocketed, says cyber analyst Peak Metrics. Most posts were sympathetic, but a smaller percentage spread disinformation and conspiracy theories. That includes baseless claims that political parties on either side are responsible. Analysts say this is where media have an important role in sorting fact from fiction.
There's no evidence for either of these conspiracy theories, but they reflect the kind of claims that are spreading in this very polarized, emotional climate in the immediate aftermath of the assassination attempt.
Trump was back in public Monday at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, where the now famous photo is appearing on T-shirts. Christina Casiedo-Smith, VOA News.
You can follow all the news updates at voanews.com and check us out on Instagram and Facebook at VOA News. You can also view past episodes at our free streaming service, VOA Plus, and follow me on Twitter, also known as X, at KGYP. I'm Katherine Gibson. See you next week for the Inside Story.